Hi everybody, I'm Erin Foley, career and life coach, and I am coming at you today to talk to you about something that's really common in the workplace, and that is ruminating over a coworker or colleague, or a boss or a manager. It frequently tends to be thinking sort of obsessively and getting really caught up in someone else's behavior. A lot of times it's your manager or your supervisor. And it's tricky because there is something to be said about needing to vent, that we oftentimes, when things are building up and we're feeling frustrated, we want to come home and vent. We want to walk into our coworker's office and vent. But what becomes a little bit hard to distinguish is when you're venting and when you're really fueling the issue, feeding your anger, creating more anxiety, and then in turn really skewing your perception of being able to evaluate that person, evaluate their behavior, engage with them, handle them. So what happens to a lot of people in the workplace is that, let's say you're really frustrated about your manager Bob, and you think Bob's like a total idiot, and you think Bob can't do anything right, and you think Bob is difficult to work with. And your coworkers may share this. So there's lots of times where we bond over a consensus over sort of hating somebody, not liking the way somebody works. And they start to come into your office and people want to continuously talk about how he sucks and how he's ridiculous and how his behavior is out of control. And what happens is that initially you're getting a little bit of a dopamine hit, because we sort of get on this high horse where we like this feeling of getting to complain and be enraged and feel self-righteous. And so it gives us this dopamine hit, which is part of why sometimes we can crave doing it. But the bad part about that is that in the long term, it really fuels your anxiety, it depletes your energy, and it completely sabotages your ability to work objectively with Bob. So what happens is you start getting everyone else's opinions, you start fueling the fire. A lot of times we start creating really in-depth stories where we're giving meaning and intention to Bob's behavior that's not actually there. And it starts to really feed your perception of what's going on at the workplace, and it makes you less fulfilled in your job and in your work. So one of the things I tell my clients to do a lot is to try to detox that as much as possible in your workspace. That really being strategic about who you vent with, how often you do that, trying to keep that venting to be small and productive, to kind of say what you need to say if you're upset about a situation, but really not letting yourself getting wrapped up in that sort of tidal wave that comes of everyone wanting to talk about how this person sucks in these 57 ways. It's not actually serving you in your career. It's going to make it a lot more difficult when you go to interact with Bob. You're going to not only take your experiences, but you're going to take everyone else's experiences, and you're likely going to start to tell stories about who Bob is that are much more extreme than who he actually is. The other thing that I see that happens a lot with this is that while I'm working with a client and they start to build a really strong perception of how Bob perceives them and how Bob perceives their work and how Bob perceives his job and how he doesn't care, they lose the ability to see clearly the instances in which Bob was actually helpful, supportive, gave them a lot of evidence that he thought their performance was well. Like I will work with people that are extremely intelligent and very sort of emotionally aware, but they end up projecting so much onto Bob that when I kind of move through all of the issues and start extracting information, there will be lots of very clear evidence that Bob actually is doing the best he can, that he actually thinks they're performing well, that he actually cares about his workers, but they're unable to see that because they've gotten so wrapped up in this tidal wave, they've gotten so attached to these stories about who Bob is that they can't see clearly anymore. So I encourage you to try to detox your workspace. Try to be really conscious of how much you allow yourself to get wrapped up in that conversation. It's fine to let people know, hey, I've been getting a lot of anxiety around this. I'm just getting too wrapped up in it. I'm going to just kind of pull out of these conversations for now because it's becoming too much. Give yourself room to be able to shut down, do your thing, and not spend your day with your mind wrapped up in someone else's behavior who you can't control anyway, because you end up wasting so much of your own creativity, your own fulfillment, your own projects, your own contributions, and your own desire to build what you want for yourself and your career. So that is my tip for today on dealing with ruminating in the workplace. That's one way to do it. There's a lot of other stuff that we can get into. Stay tuned and I will get into more of that. Please feel free to check me out on erinmfoley.com for more information on my career coaching programs. And in the meantime, I will be back with more awesome career information for you. Thanks for tuning in.